I'm living this street life by this point. I have glitter all over me from working at the club. I have my little cute neon outfits on and everything. So I put all my stuff in a duffel bag. I get on a Greyhound bus by myself. So in today's video, I figured I would just do my life story for you guys, kind of all in one place. If you guys don't already know me, hi, my name is Christina. Whenever I was 21, I was sentenced to 3 years prison in the state of Florida. So the story that I'm going to be telling today is basically going to be everything before I went to prison. Before we get into it though, I do want to let you guys know that this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody, everywhere, in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. Good morning, my lovelies, my beauties, my friends. My name is Christina and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really hope that you will subscribe, stick around, take a chance on hearing some things that I have to say. And if you are a returning subscriber, y'all already know, y'all are my babies. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. So I've just really been thinking about it. I'm like, you know, when I've been doing my videos here on YouTube, my stories are kind of all spread out. And sometimes like I'll do a Q&A and I'll answer like a question to a life story in a Q&A. So then people will come back and ask me a question and it's like, it's in the middle of another video somewhere. So I felt like today I would do a very simple life story from before I went to prison. Now, why before I went to prison? Because I do have a list of videos that tells you guys like my prison experience. I have a video telling you guys why I went to prison. I have a video telling you guys what happened when I got out of prison, my last day of prison, my first day of prison. I have all of those videos. I will leave them linked down below in a playlist in case you want to go and hear like the details of all of that. I also do want to remind you guys, or let you know if you do not know me, from the day that I was born, it has been literally one traumatic incident after another. I mean, I've had good moments, I think. I'm pretty sure I can remember some good moments. I definitely had some fun moments as a teenager. They may not have been good moments, but some fun moments. But other than that, it's been a lot. So I can't tell you guys everything that's happened, right? And some things are just not appropriate for YouTube for a multitude of different reasons. Some parts of my story that are not appropriate for YouTube are on my Patreon account. I will leave that link down in the description box, but that is for 18 and up because I'm just not comfortable talking about those types of topics with children. I love you guys. I'm sorry. And there are, to be honest with you guys, some parts of my story and things that happened to me that I'm just not comfortable sharing at all. And I'm sure you guys understand that. You know, it's one thing to get on here and tell you guys all of the craziness that's happened or most of the craziness that's happened, but there are just some parts that I'm just not comfortable with even reliving, repeating, or telling the story. And I know you guys understand, and thank you guys for respecting me. So let's just start from the beginning. You guys know me. My name is Christina. I am 35 years old. I will be 36 in October. Woo, woo, woo. Never thought I would live this long. I did not write anything down. I'm going to skim the top of this because there are so many layers of this and just kind of give you guys an idea of what my life was like before I ended up in prison. Okay, so my mother, my birth mother, my biological mother was actually a dancer at a club, right? She was a stripper, basically. Well, that's exactly what she was. And she was working in this club and my dad came in, and my biological dad, and he met her there. And that's where they met. My mama was swinging around a pole and he was probably drinking a beer, all that there and the other. Well, they got together, and I'm not really sure of all the details of their relationship, but I do know that my biological dad had told me that my mom and him, like, she had gotten pregnant a bunch of different times, and she just kept having abortions. She was just, you know, having abortion after abortion, and that's, you know, I can't say anything about that. I don't whatever. And when she got pregnant with me, according to my dad, he told me, which he didn't know me at the time, he just knew that like, okay, like I'm done with you doing this. I'm done with you like using, you know, abortion as a form of birth control, and you need to have this baby or it's going to be this, and this. And he threatened her with all this stuff. And for whatever reason, she decided to have the baby. And so she ended up having me. And my mother lived in a house that my grandfather, which was her father, and they're all from Greek. They migrated from Greek over here, and you know, all of that stuff. But she was living in his house, and he basically told my mom, like, either you marry him or he needs to get out. This is my house. And so they got married. My mom and my dad did. Now, according to my dad, they were never really in love. And I know that that happens a lot. A lot of the times people get, you know, pregnant or whatever, and they're not in love, or they don't even really know each other, and they get married because they have a baby, and that's what happened. Well, my dad had his own issues, okay, and my mom definitely had her issues, and for whatever reason, they ended up not staying together, and my dad left. My dad, you know, now here I am, baby Christina, right? And this is a picture of baby Christina right here. This is the beginning of my life. So, before I was even born, the way I look at it, as something was trying to take me out because my mom wanted to get an abortion. So even before I entered this world, my life was on the chopping block. Crazy to think about. My mom ended up getting with this other dude, and he was selling substances to the clubs in my town. Well, actually, he was selling them all across Florida and Louisiana, and like he was part of a big organization, I'm not going to say the name, that sells substances. And she ended up getting with him, and he was very, very, very controlling. The stories that I heard about him is crazy. Like my grandmother told me that one time this dude that she was with showed up at her house, my grandmother's house, and my grandfather's brother was there, and this guy went into his truck and he pulled a big metal chain, you know, like a chain that you would tie or pull a truck or something with. He got out of his truck, he went up to my grandfather's brother, and he took the chain and he split his head wide open. I mean, this dude was part of an organization that was about that life, okay? So whatever. So anyways, stuff ended up happening with my mom, and I ended up living with one of my grandmothers and kind of going back and forth. And I was little at this time. And this dude that my mom was with went in and out of the states and like trafficked and did whatever. And I guess my mom was going to end up running off with him. So my mom goes to my grandmother's house and says, hey, I want to take Christina to see her great grandpa, which was my mom's grandpa. And my grandmother said, okay. And when she took me, she disappeared with me, and I was missing at this point. Now, if you guys want to know all the details of what happened here, watch this video right here. It is a really hard watch. It was a hard film too, but this is the details of it. But I'm going to give you guys a little rundown here. Anyways, I ended up getting taken somewhere and tortured for 17 months. To put it very lightly, I was locked into a bathroom. It was locked from the outside. I was burned. I was kicked. I was beaten. And I just really went through a lot as a very small baby. Well, my mother and him were ended up coming in and out of the States again. They were on the run from the police. I was a missing child, but this was back in the 80s. Now when there's a missing child, you're sharing it on social media. You have this and that or whatnot. There was no computers and social media like that back then. So I was just literally a poster in the neighborhood type of thing, okay? And my grandmother, who she's passed away now, this is my dad's mom, told me that she kept calling like the missing child's hotline, and they kept saying, ma'am, you need to give it up. Like, she's gone. She's not coming back. But my grandmother just did not give up. Like, she was like, my grandmother who has passed away told me she knew I was going through it. She said because another time my mom and him had showed up to where I was, and I would always have like black eyes or bruises. She said one time I showed up and I had a broken arm. My arm was in a cast, and my grandmother said, what happened to her? And she said that my mom's boyfriend guy, whoever she's with, told him that I fell out of the bed of a truck and broke my arm. But my grandmother told me, she's like, I knew that that's not what happened, but you couldn't talk to tell me. She was like, I knew he was abusing you. So she said when I was missing, she knew that either I was going to end up dead or that I was being severely abused. And I was. So anyways, When they were traveling in and out of the States, they stopped in a place in Louisiana, and the very last thing that happened, if you watch this video, he kicked me in the back of the head. My mother took me, dropped me off. Here's this little kid, drops me off in a hospital, and I'm beaten half to death, and the hospital doesn't know who I am, but I end up going into foster care there. Okay, so there's a kid just dropped off. And in foster care, I ended up moving in with this woman who really loved me, supposedly, and wanted to adopt me. And the crazy thing is, let me show you guys something. When I was living with this woman, she gave me this book. And I still have this book to this day. And she wrote me a note in it before I got taken from her. And I still have this. And it says, "To Christina, with all of my love, you'll always be in my heart. Your foster mother, blah, blah, blah." And supposedly she was trying to adopt me. Well, at this point, my family member, I guess my family members had found out that I was in this foster home, and so they started going to Louisiana and fighting for me. And according to my grandmother, this woman loved me so much she did not want to give me up, that the police had to come to her house to get me and bring me to court. Well, anyways, around 5 years old, they ended up going through all this court stuff, and my family got me back. And this is actually a picture of me the day that they got me back. Isn't that crazy? Like, look how small I was. I had been through all of that. This is outside of the courthouse right here, the day that they got me back. Well, after they get me back, they bring me back home, and what they don't realize is back in the 80s, this wasn't talked about like this. I had severe PTSD. I mean, I had lived in a bathroom for 17 months and eaten all kinds of stuff that a child should not be eating, and beating, and all kinds of abuse, okay? And I had a lot of issues. I mean, I remember being a little kid and like looking, you know, and thinking people were watching me in the vents, and thinking people were watching me in the windows, but I didn't know how to process that, and nobody, you know, nobody helped me. And I just don't think that they knew how, okay? And so from there, it was like every time, you know, and my dad, he loved me, but he struggled with addiction issues, and he couldn't provide a stable home for me because he had his own issues. So from there, I ended up bouncing around, and it was like, okay, now your turn to take her, your turn to take her, your turn to take her, your turn to take her. And from that, I started developing this mental process of like, I don't have a real home, and nobody's home is my own. And I was always having to readjust in new places. And if I was going to a family member, if I was going to a new foster home, or if I was going to a new group home, maybe I was going from a group home back to a family member, and then I go from that family member to a foster home. And then I was always switching schools, and I was growing up like this. And I started to just feel angry. And I started to feel like, you know, nobody wanted me, and that nobody really loved me. Some people that I lived with and that I loved very much would say things to me like, you know, your family should have left you with that foster mom. And they would say her name. She really loved you. She really wanted to take care of you. And I think looking back at it, they thought that they were telling me something nice, but in a child's mind, that with the moving around and the this and that, it processed to me that like, nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me. So I'm always a burden. I'm always somebody's chore. I'm always somebody's, you know, whatever. And I started to internalize things, and I started to eat as a kid as I moved around to hide my feelings. And then I started to gain weight. Then from there, I started to get picked on. I started to move around. And I remember at one point, I lived with this one family who I really loved them. I really wanted to be with them, but the parents were so hard on me. And this is not to feel sorry for myself. This is just to be honest with you guys. I was in elementary school, and I was not allowed to make C's. And anytime I made a C, I would get in so much trouble. I would get spankings. I would get grounded. And the way it worked was if I made a C on my report card, I would be grounded until the next report card. And I believe I was in 4th grade, and I got off, and I was riding the school bus, and I had gotten my report card, and I knew I had 1 C on it. And I was so freaking scared. And so when I got off the school bus, I threw my report card in a ditch, and I went home and said, oh, they didn't give me one. Well, the woman ended up finding out that I got a report card, and that I had a C on it, and that I lied about it, and I got in so much trouble. And, you know, as a kid, I just thought it was all my fault. Like, I'm the bad kid. I'm the one that can't make AB honor roll. Now, as an adult looking back, I realize that not every kid is an A honor roll student. And I was trying so hard. And I had so many mental issues that was not being dealt with. Because either people didn't know, or maybe some people didn't want to be bothered. And, you know, nothing that I did was ever good enough. And then at this point, as I began to gain more and more weight, I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't loved enough. And I just, man, you guys, I developed like the worst self-hatred. I was the queen of self-hatred. And so as I became a teenager and I was getting in trouble and I started getting arrested for little things like fighting and biting back at people. And when I started to fight, I started to realize I was good at something. I was good at something. I was good at taking hits because I had been taking hits my whole life thus far. I was good at fighting back. I was strong. And so I started to develop this identity as a teenager that like I was a scrappy person. And I wanted to not only protect myself, but protect my friends. And then I started trying to protect my friends for things they didn't need to be protected of. Like if somebody called them the B word, you know, oh, they're going to have to deal with me. But that gave me my identity and it gave me something special. And so I just went down this rabbit hole of like that type of person. I remember this one time that I was living with this family when I was in 9th grade. And just so you guys know, if you want to know how much I moved around a lot, I went to 13 different schools by the time I hit 9th grade. 13 by the time I hit 9th grade. That's how much I moved. Okay. And in this time too, before I get into that part of that story, I did go to group homes. I did get arrested. I did get sent to different programs. I was in and out of all of this stuff. But I remember being with this one family and they had 2 daughters. And the daughter that was my age, a little bit younger than me, was getting in trouble. And the father came to me and I was so excited to be there because I felt like I was in a family environment. I mean, I didn't have my own room or anything, but I felt like I've got like kind of like sisters and, you know, there's the mom and the dad here. And the dad came to me with tears in his eyes one day and he was like, you know, my daughter that was my age, she's getting in trouble and we can't have you here because we have to deal with her. And I just remember thinking that now as an adult looking back, I understand that they have to take care of their own first. But it's like, I just remember always feeling like it didn't matter what I did. Even if I was good, you know, I was still an inconvenience, you know? So at the age of 15 in 9th grade, I dropped out of school. I just was done. I was done trying. I was literally done trying. Nothing that I did was good enough. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. Now, during this time, actually, when I was very, very, very young, I started to develop an ed to manage my emotions, to manage my anxiety, to manage probably my out of controlness of my life. If you guys want to know my ed story, you guys can watch this video right here. There's actually more details of my life in there, but you guys can just go and check that out. I'm not going to go into too much detail with that. Well, I started realizing that as my body was changing, people were seeming to accept me even more. And, you know, that was a whole nother spiral. So now here I am. I'm this scrappy girl that's lived all over the place. Okay, by this time I've gone to 13 different schools by the time I'm in 9th grade, right? Like I've lived all over the place. And I, you know, have just now, I'm dropping weight. I'm dealing with my anxiety in this way. And I knew that I had these savings bonds. Now this part here is going to be in this story. If you want to watch this video right here. Okay. Whenever I was a baby, my great grandfather bought me 2 savings bonds for $25 each, okay? And they grew with interest. Now, savings bonds don't grow like that still to this day, but they did back then. And by the time I was 16, they grew to be $8,000 worth of savings bonds, okay? So it was crazy. So I wanted to get my boobs done. 16 years old. I mean, I don't need a car, obviously. I don't need to go to college, obviously. I've already dropped out in 9th grade and I'm living this street life by this point. I'm bouncing around, living with friends, doing whatever. And I went to my girlfriend's house, and she was 16 too, and she lived with her mom. And I got my grandmother, because she was the beneficiary on those bonds, to sign those bonds over. And I lied to a plastic surgeon, and I had plastic surgery. Please don't do that. Any of my babies out there, please do not do that. Bad decision, okay? Anyways, so I ended up having plastic surgery. So now I'm really well known in my town because I'm living all this crazy life, right? Like now I'm like the 16-year-old, like, oh my gosh, like I'm just, ugh. Well, then at this point, my friend, I'm 16 years old. And I mean, I'm living this wild and crazy life, doing all these crazy things, getting into fights, in and out of juvenile facilities, in and out of juvenile programs, in and out of group homes, But at 16, by this time, I'm done with the group homes. I'm living on my own, right? I had a friend that worked at a club, and she was underage too. And she was like, I can get you a job working at this club. And I'm like, how can you get me a job working here? Like, you had to be 18 to even get into the clubs, right? Some clubs you got to be 21 to get into, but some you have to be just 18, and I'm only 16. Wasn't no fake IDs like they got now back then, okay? So she was like, come up here. So I come up there, and I'll be danged if I didn't go back into the office, and the man gave me a job. He was like, hey, he was like, let me get fill out this paperwork here. And I wrote down everything about myself, everything true, except for my birth year. I put 2 more years prior to what my birth year actually is. And he said, can I get your ID? I said, oh, it's out in the car. Can I bring it to you later? And he said, yes. So now I'm working in this club, right? And I am having the time of my life. I'm able, by this point, after I've been in this club for a while, I start meeting people that work at other clubs, and I'm 16, so I'm going into other clubs, and then I'm able to sneak my underage friends into the club. So like literally now everybody knows me for real. Like, Christina can get you into the club, I remember I would go to, like, you know, they would have after hour clubs. So like our clubs here in town would stay open till 3 in the morning. And then we had this one certain club that was like the after hours club that everybody would go to afterwards. And it would stay open till like 5 or 6 in the morning. And I'd go there. I'd have glitter all over me from working at the club. I'd have my little cute neon outfits on and everything. My little rave outfits and everything. My bleach blonde hair, my labret piercing, my tongue piercing, like the whole shebang, glitter all up on my eyes, y'all, looking like it's a walking disco ball. And I would, you know, we'd go to the club, and the line would be wrapped all the way around the building. And I would walk up with me and my underage friends, and they would clink, clink, pull that little red rope and let me and all my friends in. And it was just, I'm not going to lie, I had a lot of fun. I did things I should not have been doing, but I can't lie to you guys. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of dancing, I met a lot of really cool people. And yeah, so that was my life then. And I kept living that life, but I kept getting in trouble. I'd swing on somebody in a heartbeat, get into fights, all that there and the other. Then on my 18th birthday, I was turning 18. I went to a party, and it was going to be turning 18 at midnight, and I got into a fight with these girls. That is all in my Why I Went to Prison story video if you guys want to hear that. And then from there, when I got into that fight, I ran from that fight. I knew that I was 18. I ended up going and getting my license to work at a club the very next morning because I knew I had a warrant that was going to be coming out for my arrest because I had just gotten into this crazy fight with these 2 girls. And I started working at the most high class club in my town because now I'm 18. I literally, the day of my 18th birthday, I went and got a job at like the most prestige club in my town. Well, from there, I started meeting girls that worked there that were going to New Orleans on the weekends. Okay, so now I'm 18, right? And I'm working at this high-class club, making good money with all these chicks. I'm just a baby, really. I literally just turned 18. And New Orleans is like 3 hours away from us. So I started going there on the weekends, and we would work at the clubs there. And then I started really making some crazy money. You guys, I was making ridiculous amount of money. We were working on Bourbon Street, New Orleans. If you guys don't know what Bourbon Street is, it's just like nothing but a party. So from there, I'm working on the weekends, and then I decide, you know what, I've got this warrant out for my arrest here in Florida. I'm just going to move to New Orleans. So what I did was I packed up all of my stuff in a duffel bag that I wanted to take. I'm 18 years old, right? Been working there. I got money saved up because I've been going there on the weekends, right? And at this point, I had already quit working at the club in my hometown because I was making so much money working on just the weekends in New Orleans. So I just only had to work on the weekends. So I decided I'm going to move there, right? Then I don't have to look over my shoulder. That's how I felt at the time. I'm a ding dong, but that's what I thought. So I put all my stuff in a duffel bag. I get on a Greyhound bus by myself. I ride the Greyhound bus to New Orleans. I get off the bus. I take a cab to a hotel. I get me a hotel room, and then I go start working at the clubs until I got enough money to get an apartment. Now, the apartment that I lived in was apartment 411A Bourbon Street, and this apartment was actually owned by one of the clubs that I worked for, and they would have it for people that were out of town that would come in, and I just lived there. And it was so cool. Like the apartment was so nice. Like you would be walking down Bourbon Street, you'd go into this little courtyard and go all the way to the back, and then there'd be an open courtyard. You have to like unlock these gates, and it was a 2-story apartment back there, and it had big old garden tub and a big old kitchen, and I just felt like I was living the dream at first. One of the weird things about living in New Orleans though, or not necessarily weird, but it's different than what is in my town or the way we work in Florida, is when somebody dies in New Orleans, they celebrate. So they would have these parades and stuff. So I would be sleeping 8 o'clock in the morning because I've been working at the club till 5 a.m. and you'd hear bump, 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 a whole parade going down. And you're like, what is going on? So-and-so died. I'm like, golly. So anyways, I lived there for about a year, and I realized that, like, dang, I'm making such good money here and I'm doing nothing with myself because I have these warrants out for my arrest. So what am I going to do? So I decided, I was watching all of my friends at the clubs. They were buying brand new cars, they were buying brand new houses, and I couldn't do any of that because I had this you know, dark cloud over me that I had warrants out for my arrest from these fights that I had gotten into. So I saved up a bunch of money. I took a bus back to my hometown, and my grandmother, the one that you guys know, I went to her house. I stayed there for the weekend. I told her I was going to turn myself in, and then I took a cab, called a cab, from my grandma's house to the county jail, and I turned myself in. Well, I turned myself in, and the judge ended up letting me out, and then he put me on the 2 years probation. And from the 2 years probation, and I talked to you guys about this in my Why I Went to Prison Story video, 2 years probation, I made it 23 months out of 24 months, and I violated driving on a suspended license. And when I got violated for driving on a suspended license, I ended up going to work release, escaping work release, getting into that next fight, and going to prison. Now, there is a light, a very, very light rundown of my life story, of things that happened to me and with me, and how I got to prison. So let me know if you guys want to know anything else. That is just kind of how things fell into place. And like I said, if you guys want to know what happened during prison, if you guys want to know how I got to where I am now, how I met my husband, how we got together, all of those videos will be in the description box. But there's my life story. So as always, my loves, please do not forget to like this video. It's a free way that you can help your girl out. And until next time, I love you guys so very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
We are